Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Meghan Henry. I'm so excited for today's episode because I'm joined by Evelyn Patrick. And Evelyn and I have been talking for months. She actually reached out to me months ago about collaborating on a program that she had in mind. And we kept in touch. And, when I mentioned having her come on the podcast, she said, absolutely, I'm so interested in coming on. And one of the things we really are looking to talk about today is, the importance of networking and to help, rise up through our careers, but also the importance of doing that early on versus later on. And we want to talk about how to encourage mentorship and how young professionals can really work to find mentors and network and just kind of build the basis to build up their career. So with that, let me bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good afternoon, Evelyn. How are you? Welcome to Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you today.
Oh, hi, Meghan. It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm thrilled to have you. You and I kind of started this conversation, I feel like in the fall. You had called me out, kind of not out of the blue, but messaged me about, kind of working together on a presentation, an industry presentation. And then we started talking about the podcast, and I made some moves, and since then we reconnected, and I'm so glad that you're here to join me. I feel like we've had a bunch of conversations about today, so I'm so glad it's finally here.
It's amazing to see it come to fruition, and I'm just glad we both had the time to connect.
Yes, and I will say, I say this about every guest. I'm so excited to have you, but I feel like I feel like every time we get on the phone, it's like I've known you for a long time. It's like, I don't know if maybe it's your personality or it's just how we link together, but I'm like, man, I love talking to Evelyn.
Oh, that's so nice of you. The same is true on my end. I feel like you're an old friend in some ways. We haven't known each other that long, have we?
No, we have not, but that's all right. We got years ahead of us.
We do. Plenty of time.
So, as most my listeners know, I do like to start off with every guest to kind of get a feel of, how you got where you are, because I find it so interesting. Personally, I like to know your path and how you got here, because everyone's path is so different. And, in the insurance industry, I will say it's not most people planned to be in the insurance industry. Many just ended up in the insurance industry. So having said that, what was your path? How did you end up where you are now?
That is such a great question. So I guess the first thing I want to make sure that I cover on my end, just because insurance risk is such that it is that today all thoughts and opinions expressed are mine and mine alone. They are not necessarily reflective of my current employer, Crum Forster, or any other organization for which I've worked. So just want to get that disclosure out of the way, right?
Asterisk is at the top of the screen. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. So, let's see. How did I get into the industry? And this is something I think about more and more, which is strange, the further out I get from my start, just because I feel like what you said resonates with me, this concept of how do really any of us end up working in insurance. And I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like a lot of people want to tell that story because it's so powerful to say, I knew I wanted to be this since I was in second grade and I worked toward it my entire life, but that would be a lie. And it's just not true.
and you would be the first person to say that.
But the thing is, so I'm going to circle back to this, but I'm wanting to start a movement within the insurance industry where eventually someday in 10 or 15 years, we can interview and connect with men and women in the industry that can say that, and it's true and it's organic, and it is just how they arrived at the industry.
Yeah.
But I think most of us, you're right, we fell into it, didn't we? So let's see here. I was a communications major in undergrad. I did have a minor in legal studies. I did graduate. My dad always says, still to this day, that he was extremely proud of me because I graduated on a Friday and I started work at a law firm in legal support on a Monday.
Really?
I did. I did not take any time off. That was probably not my best idea. But it's true. And, I had actually connected with kind of finishing up my last semester in undergrad, had been a journalism major within communications for print, and had already kind of decided as a senior, I am going to finish this degree that I've started, but I don't think I want to write articles for a newspaper or a magazine.
Yeah.
And
and not to interrupt, but like, I'm going to interrupt.
fine.
But like, I would say, like, I completely understand going into journalism, but then I think once you get there, you realize the realities of this, and you're gonna be a starving writer working for like a local paper.
You really are. And I mean, it's honestly, I think this whole concept of like starving artist, right? I think it sounds maybe a lot, I don't know, sexier, when people aren't doing it in the reality of life, and you have a trouble paying potentially your rent at a townhome in downtown, or, you can't, you don't have, what was it, Marissa Tomei? You don't have 3/4 full cup of coffee, right? So I had kind of thought about doing that, and it kind of moved away from it. And I had this legal studies minor that I had like straight A's in. And it just came really easily to me, like evidence, crim law, like civil practice and procedure, and all the things. And so, of course, it wasn't law school, and I kind of wasn't sure if I wanted to go that route. So I decided to get into legal support, and we had a really active bar association where I was, and they actually did some recruitment for legal support roles for they had partnered with different law firms. So they kind of would meet with you and put you through, like all recruiters, a bunch of tests and like a pre-interview and get your paperwork, and kind of then hook you up with different firms or organizations locally that were potentially considering to hire on, or plus up for staff for different roles. And so I will say that was my first experience with a recruiter, and it was a really positive one. And I ended up, like I said, I had a job before I graduated, which was something that was amazing. Probably should have taken some time off, but I did not. And so that's kind of where I started. And I actually worked for an insurance defense law firm.
Mm-hmm.
And they did everything from, we'll say, general liability, premises liability, products, things like that, defense. But they also did do a large amount of professional lines, liability as well. So like your med mal, your nursing home defense, things like that. And so I kind of got into this, and I still wasn't necessarily 6 months, 12 months, 18 months in thinking, I'm really just gonna want to do claims. I had gone to grad school for a while, kind of after, like between all this, and had an opportunity to interview with the Hartford Financial Services, and I did so, and it was a warm interview, and the work in group life disability sounded interesting and like something that might kind of be impactful work, because you hopefully are, putting people at the forefront of kind of your day-to-day and caring about your claimants. And I thought, I might want to get into this kind of training class and learn a little bit more about it. And so I started at the Hartford when I was 24 years old, and I really have not actually left the practice of insurance in some fashion or form since then. And that's been a couple decades ago. So I've worked for multiple carriers and in-house risk. And I also was once a legal recruiter for a brief period of time, recruiting lawyers in the DC and New York markets for, firms and in-house roles, but have always kind of been that somehow, nexus of insurance, legal risk.
Yeah. Well, just a quick question about doing the legal recruiting, because this is just something I always wonder, like, is it such a pain in the butt to deal with a bunch of attorneys looking for jobs? Like you have an attorney client, and then you have to deal with attorney like law firms, and you have to connect that. And like, I don't know. I feel like it's a tough job. It seems like a really tough job. A lot of personality you have to kind of manage.
So I think that the answer is complicated to that, because I know it wasn't so much like I never viewed any of the kind of in-house recruitment partners or managing partners or the individual attorneys that I had the opportunity to work with kind of in any kind of like poor fashion. So I didn't really think people were a pain in the butt, but let's be honest, people are people, and recruitment is a type of sales. And anybody who says, really almost in any industry, in any role that you're doing, that they're not in sales is kidding themselves.
It's totally sales.
Right. Sales is really, I mean, even to some extent, like in operations and insurance, there's a sales component, I believe, to almost every job. And the reason is maybe you're selling yourself, right? Maybe you're trying to prove your own worth, in a particular role. Perhaps you are, really in sales and you're selling a product or a thing. The hard part about recruitment, however, versus like if you were selling Xerox machines or, we'll say pharmaceuticals or something like that, is in recruitment, you are, this is going to sound terrible, selling people really to other people. And, and people are different than, I don't know, like a medical device, in that they have thoughts and feelings and opinions, and they have life goals, and they have family situations and personal things going on. And so with that, what I learned a lot about that. I was in my 20s at the time, and I learned a lot about how even if you are an excellent recruiter and you're amazing at your job, there are a lot of things like that they talk to you about learning to overcome obstacles and challenges, and, make sure that you're qualifying your candidates. But at the end of the day, sometimes people can be unpredictable, or people change their minds, and that's okay. But in that way, I think recruitment is probably one of the more challenging sales type roles in the kind of, like, we'll say, arena of sales positions. And what I liked most, though, about that job was that I had this wonderful opportunity to meet so many different people from different walks of life and living in different areas of the country, that really I just spent hours and hours learning about human beings and their law practices and their book of business and what they wanted to do, and trying to help them figure out what's the best match for your portable book, or can you get the lifestyle that you're wanting somewhere else, or what are your reasons for leaving? And sometimes, I was always this kind of person that I felt like you had to put people first. It wasn't about trying to make a placement. It was about trying to help somebody get somewhere that they were wanting to go, or potentially sometimes after talking to somebody, having to give them the advice of, you know what, I actually am going to say, I think you should stay put. You're at a really good place right now.
Yeah. But having gone through my own recruitment process a few times in my career, I will say I especially early on, I found the recruiters I would deal with were definitely out for the placement and not my well-being. And then later on, it kind of shifted and changed. I mean, they're still in for the placement, but so I love that you take that you took that approach to it versus like I just want to get the person placed because it's money for me, and you're thinking about your own bottom line rather than thinking about what would be best for this individual.
I think we, as kind of like a society, and this is definitely true in recruitment, but it's true in other industries as well, we have to step back from looking at people as something that is like just a commodity. Human beings are at the core of everything we're doing, and we need to remember that, and we need to consider that people are at different places in their lives, and that their journey matters. And that's really, I think, at the foundation of like a lot of the decisions I've made over my career, regardless of what I was doing at the time or, what I was looking to do. And I kind of feel like people are important, and we need to treat them with dignity and respect, and we need to have a care for that. And we also need to not view things, even like recruitment, as it should not be a transactional business.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. So, so after you had like your stint in recruitment, then you went back to insurance, right?
I did. I got recruited back to a place where I had been, we'll say, an adjuster. People have all these different names from it.
Recruiter got recruited back.
I did. And so, people have different names for things in insurance. So, and you still see it today. So some people are adjusters, and some people are examiners, and some people are analysts. And I've been everything. I've been all of those things, and unfortunately more. But, I had at a place where I had been essentially an adjuster. and an individual contributor, I got recruited back to manage a team of people working claims files. So I was excited about the opportunity, and I still recall going into that interview and not really because I knew someone and they had called me and wanted to talk, and not even really being sure exactly what role they were considering me for. It was kind of like, you're being considered for a few things right now. We just want to have an organic conversation with you and understand where you're coming from and how that might best fit with what we're trying to do here. And I love that, actually, because I think that is a great way to go about kind of sometimes the recruitment process on both sides, because, maybe everyone is acknowledging that we're all looking for the right fit, that it's two-sided.
Yeah. So, when you took on that role though as a manager, was that your first time in a manager type role?
It was definitely my first time in a management role in the insurance industry.
So how was that transition for you? Because I can imagine difficult, because it's you now have to come into this new place. And you're like, okay, now I have to manage people. And I guess you had, in a way, coming from recruiting, you manage people in some respect with recruitment. You have to be attuned to their needs and what they're looking for, and how to kind of interact with them, but you're not managing them in their role, and now you're in this role that you have a team likely to manage and lead. So how did you, and you were young too, you weren't old.
No, I was 27.
Yeah. So how was that? That's kind of young to be a manager. Like, you probably managed people older than you.
I definitely did. I think at times that I had up to 12 or 13 people reporting to me, which kind of isn't really as much of a thing anymore. I feel like a lot of people have come around to this idea that like 7 to 8 direct reports is really probably the most ideal, kind of stretch number to really put in the time with everybody that's going to report to you. But I did get recruited back, and I think that it was probably based upon a few things. So I had particular specific technical skills that I know that I was told that they hadn't found internally that they were looking for. And so in that way, it was a good match. I'm sure part of it was also just the kind of 90-minute conversation that I had with that senior leader that day that went very well, and it was warm on both sides, and it was just a really great discussion. And then I think part of it was also because that person had apparently, I didn't realize it at the time, you learn so much over kind of, I think, your 20s and 30s about how important your professional brand is. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, okay, we're getting into this. Do you want me to provide you a list of references that you can call? And they're like, I mean, you can do that for HR, but I've already contacted a bunch of people who've known you and talked to them prior to this meeting. And I'm, oh, okay. Wow. That was, but as a 27-year-old, that was like kind of a new idea, right? It was surprising. It would no longer be surprising, which is part of why I think that, first of all, you should do the right things because integrity. Right. But I also think that people who are young and getting into this business or any business need to remember that people might forget what you said or did or wore on a particular day, but they're not ever going to forget how you made them feel. Mm-hmm. And, over time, little actions and things like that add up to your reputation, and your reputation is irreplaceable. And so in that, I guess, knock on wood, I must have done okay, because apparently they still chose to meet with me after they talked to people that I worked with. But it was kind of a new idea for sure.
Yeah. And I imagine, like, I don't know, I always have this sense of like imposter syndrome too. And in that situation, I'd be like, oh, how would they even I would be like, oh, they remember me. like people that they, what they talk to about you, to be like, oh, how do they know Evelyn? For me, I'd be like, oh, really? Like, they knew who I was? And, like, I always just have that, like, oh, I remember you, but you probably don't remember me. And then it's funny when it turns around and be like, no, we remember who you are. But I agree so much with that impression stuff. And like, just, you never know what interaction you have and where that will lead later, or who, or the impact that interaction is going to have on somebody. And you don't have want to have a positive interaction only to serve you well later. You want to have a positive interaction to serve your moment, but you never know
100%.
what's going to happen with that. So it's like you always just have to treat people with respect and, and kindness and just being like fair. I like deal with it like on a daily basis in cases, and I'm sure you as well. Like when you have opposing counsel, like you don't need to fight with them. We don't need to fight.
I think
I mean, we can argue about our differences.
A lot of people would disagree with you on that, but no, I agree. I think that just in life in general, there doesn't have to be so much discord. We can all agree that we're hoping to get to a particular mutually agreeable outcome. We may disagree about what the outcome is, but we can treat each other with respect and kindness and in a supportive framework as we work to negotiate that or resolve differences or come to that middle ground.
Absolutely. So eventually you end up at Crum Forster. So like,
I did.
What? Well, let's talk about what the claims that you're looking at now. Like, what falls under? Like, what kind of claims are under you at this point? Like, what are you looking at?
Well, so I don't adjudicate claims anymore. And I I manage programs. So I actually do essentially like third-party administrative oversight.
Yes.
And really, I could say that the claims range, just a lot of things across the accident and health sector, as well as some things that are liability products or liability-like products that just happen to fall at our organization within A&H.
Yeah.
So I handle a lot of risk or occupational risk stuff, some kind of liability things, and a smattering of other matters. Whatever they ask me to do, I'm happy to do for them.
So what are some of the challenges you have with managing TPA oversight? Because like, look, you like, it's like you have your systems and they have their systems, and like, so I imagine there's some challenges there in how things flow and are operated.
I don't really know that. When I think about it, I'm not going to say that in life there are never zero challenges. That's not true. But I feel like the most important thing in any kind of insurance role, whether you be in oversight, managing an internal team of people, maybe that it doesn't matter. It's the human connection, and that's not necessarily a challenge. It's just, if I had to say what's the advice there, it's good communication. It's, setting reasonable expectations early and continuing to touch base upon that kind of early expectation and make sure we're kind of like reinforcing that. It's being approachable. And wanting to work as a team, and teamwork is huge to me. I've been very blessed to work at a number of organizations where I've had the opportunity to learn from some amazing leaders, as well as even just in a peer situation or network. And oversight is really, it's not different in that way. It's people working together for, outcome, and hopefully the outcome for anybody in claims is to do the right thing at the right time for the right reason.
Yes. Right. And I mean, the challenges though with that is like, I feel as a whole on the industry, everyone's trying to do the right thing for the right reason. And then, there's hiccups, right? Like in claims, there are hiccups, and whether it be that the claimant is looking for way too much, or we don't have enough facts, or, I feel like in the industry there, or outside the industry, there's like this, there wants to be this painting picture that, the insurance just wants to not give you your money or whatever it may be. But sometimes it's just like, we don't have enough information, or we have to assess what's fair in this given scenario. And, while I think there's always that hope to do or goal to do the right thing, sometimes you're still doing the right thing. It's just not exactly what the claimant might be looking for.
Well, I've been pretty lucky to not have been a claimant, at least not an accident claimant. So that's a blessing. And I would say that I'm not going to say that that entities or insurance companies within the organization never disagree with individual people on the other side of the table.
Sure.
That's not an accurate depiction of what goes on. However, I think that all we can do every day is essentially work to do the right thing.
Yep.
And, that's in clear communications, that's in setting the right expectation, that is in essentially, if you are doing claims, adjudicating the policy, ensuring that you are following all of your terms, that you're making ethical decisions, that if you're a junior person, that you're seeking feedback from your leadership team, and hopefully you have a good mentor. And I think that that's something that I know we wanted to discuss, I think, is like networking and mentorship and sponsorship. So
and you segued it perfectly for me. So that's where I was getting. And so with you, like you and I have talked about this a bit too, about the importance of, creating networking situations, not only for the C-suite, but those in early and middle industry roles, because frankly, those networking positions I think are more important than the C-suite positions, because if you want to rise up, you have to network and get, obviously the work you do is so important, but the people you work with or you network with is equally as important. But it can be intimidating, I think, as a young professional to get out there and, work the network. It's okay.
Okay, sorry. Real life comes in. We have
dogs are back. Dogs are back. It's all right.
Apparently, they're rearing their cute little heads. See, I love this topic, and I feel like this is something that I could talk about all day. This is something that I believe is so important, and that is just kind of welcoming people to the industry, making people want to choose insurance, but then, specifically because I have been in insurance for 20 years. So I think that mentorship and sponsorship and networking is something that's important in all industries, but the one that I can best speak to, right, is the one that I'm in and have been in for a long time. So I think that there is something you and I have talked about, is that there are some opportunities. They haven't been around forever, but a lot of them are very specific to target audiences, right? So, we know that there are a couple of major organizations out there right now effectuating positive change, and some for women that are trying to help very senior leaders make the C-suite. And I think I want to start off by saying I think that is such an important and laudable goal. I think that we need to have more women have a seat at the table in somewhere that's such as important as the boardroom. That is a great goal. And I think that people are doing good things right now, trying to help set a framework and a network for those people to continue to kind of like strive toward that end. But I am completely resonating with what you're saying about the importance of helping junior and mid-level professionals just kind of continue to make progress in their own careers, because there are less formal opportunities for women that look like that. And we know it's in the literature and the research, and everybody's writing articles about it. And, there's books that you can buy about, think about like Lean In, right? That women you have to network. You have to find a group of other individuals who, you will invest in you, and that will help you learn what you don't know, and will not just mentor you, but you need to work to find people who are senior, who think enough of you that will essentially sponsor you. And say your name in a room full of other people when you're not there. And so I think that maybe we have less opportunities currently or structured framework, right? Historically, for people that are more of a junior or a mid-level, which I think is challenging because what that's saying to individual humans, whether it's in our industry or another one, is it's up to you to find that path and climb that ladder by yourself. And I mean, a lot of us have done it, and have found our own people. And but it takes years, and it's kind of challenging, right? Where do you look for those people? Well, it's your current organization, 100%. So, I would say there's a lot of advice I would potentially give, junior people about that. But I am excited to look to our insurance and legal industries for, the additional build out of, we'll say, framework for this, for opportunities, for communities where everybody that's in there, whether they be junior, mid-level, or senior, is in it for the right reasons. And we're just wanting to support and build up other people, and that women are looking to support and build up other women and help our peers, and kind of, and it's a situation. It's not necessarily just top down. It can be bottom up as well.
Yeah.
We want to ensure that women are being supported and that we're doing the right things. And, we can always stand even at a senior level to learn from other women. And sometimes you're going to learn from somebody who is a mentor of yours. And sometimes there's a lot to be said for, you can learn things from people who are mentees as well. So I just think it's such like it's such a broad topic. There's so many ways you could go with this.
Well, one thing that I've found though throughout my career is that I think my biggest challenge was not so much finding those mentors who were going to help bring me up, because I was blessed to find a few that have really been dynamic in my career development. But it was more so my equal peers and the competition that seems to evolve between people at similar situated like levels in career paths, and unfortunately us women, we sometimes are mean with it. Not mean, I guess, like a little just competitive. And I remember there's been times feeling like I was trying to do my thing and I'd hear about someone doing their thing and I'd be like, oh, well, I should be doing what they're doing. And it's like, they got that. So like I'm behind, and like, and I don't know how to lessen it, because I think it happens a lot that when you're at similar levels, there's just this competition between those at the same level that you kind of want to like almost compete to get ahead of that person.
Do you think that, I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that, and this isn't specific to a particular place, but just generally speaking, do you think that that's because there's this concept that's like, whether it's always true or not, and sometimes it may be true, but it's a scarcity mindset, right? That perhaps
totally
people think that I can't help you because you're my competition and there's only one seat at the table for someone at our level. And if I help you, then it may be you and not me. Do you think it's that?
100% it's that. Like, and I used to have that scarcity mindset, being like, oh, I got to take it all for myself and I don't want to share. And now more like in the last like 4 or 5 years of my career, I'm like, well, what's the point of that? And we don't have to all be in competition. Like it's the abundance mindset that there's more for all. Let's share, and the all boats rise with the rising tides.
Right, absolutely.
But I do think I think when you are earlier in your career, that scarcity mindset, I think it just is more prevalent, because you're like almost like fighting to get to the next step, and you're only looking out for yourself and you're not really thinking about the abundance, if that makes sense.
I think that can be true. I think it was definitely true for a long time historically. And I will say that I have never been an attorney at a law firm, but I do think that unfortunately, like AmLaw 100, that's kind of, I think, just been the historical setup there, if that makes any sense. And I think that everyone wants to make partner, for example. And, similarly at companies, you might feel like, oh, if you're junior and you only have a couple of years of experience, how many seniors are they going to make this year? Or when there's an opening for a team lead, who's hoping to get that job? And then, how good does if you know that you have peers, like you're saying, at an organization, like how good does your paperwork look? How many designations do you have? How many webinars have you done? What does your work product look like? But my big thing is, yes, those are all important things, technically in terms of, I think, growth. But I also would say a lot of this comes back to me about, like, how are you treating people? What is your reputation? What does your professional brand say about you? Do you commit to things? And if you commit to them, is there follow through?
Right.
Basically.
Right. How do you feel though about, because I do feel like a lot of organizations, like larger organizations, during conferences try to have like the women's networking sessions, and I generally really like them, but I can see again how that competition negativity could come into it too. But I've always had a positive experience at them, so I'm not speaking about it from a personal sense, because I always go to those and I feel like I meet wonderful people and I make wonderful connections. But I can also see the flip side of there being just a little competitive nature to it, that it's not as free flowing. But I think that, again, that probably goes back to that scarcity mindset.
So you can't. So kind of one of the big life lessons that I think that, it really shouldn't have had to be a life lesson. It's something like my mom said a lot when I was young. And maybe when we're young, we were like, oh, I don't know how much you really know, actually. But as it turns out, quite a bit. lived experience, right?
Yeah. We might know something.
Right, absolutely. And now I'm going through that with my own 3 daughters. But so something she used to say is, it's so true, and she's not the only one who has said it, but is that we can't really control the actions, or really, unfortunately, sometimes the reactions of other people. But what we do have within our sphere of influence is how we choose to act, and what we choose to allow our reaction to look like and to be. And so in terms of whether it be at a conference or a breakout session, or people at your organization that you internally may have a feeling that, you're competing against as you're kind of rising up through your career. I think that a lot of this, it's not that there's no truth to it, but a lot of this is how this goes for you is going to depend upon how you choose your perspective, how you choose to look at the world, how you choose to interact with other people, and how you choose to put your best foot forward. Yeah. So I have been, I think, really lucky. I have had really amazing opportunities to interact with a lot of women in our industry, whether it be, people who are truly in claims, or just people across the spectrum. I think that's one thing that's so amazing about insurance is, you could be in claims, but you might work with actuarial and underwriting and sales, business development and reporting. And you might work with people at your own organization and other outside partners, policyholders, brokers. You may have the ability to just meet people from other carriers at some of these things and form connections that are kind of true and just happen in the moment, or just organic conversation that, you feel like later you're a cool person and I want to stay connected with you. And so for me, a lot of the female networking sessions that I've been to at conferences have been a really positive experience. The women that I've sat by, sometimes, assigned, sometimes not, just happen to be really amazing humans and are there for the right reasons. They're there to lift everyone's boat, if you will. So, I keep in touch with a lot of them.
Yeah. And I think my experience has mostly been that. And I do feel as though sometimes I think there's a little more competition on the attorney front, just because at a lot of those conferences, obviously the attorneys are trying to network but we're trying to network to get business. And then it's like a competition of who gets to talk to who and this and that. And like, I think there's some boasting of relationships and things like that. So
Okay.
I found my experience has been a little bit of that. And although I think that's somewhat expected, but I wish that part could just be taken away. Like, let's just have conversations and not worry about, who's getting whose ear, and like, I don't know. But I don't know if you're ever going to get rid of it. I think it's always just it's an underlying thing that's always going to be there. But my experience has definitely been I think amongst attorneys and female attorneys, there's a little bit of competition with that.
So I haven't had to, of course, look at it from necessarily, like, I haven't sat in that chair, so that hasn't been like maybe my lived experience, but it does make sense to me what you're saying, that people, everybody wants to get the client, everybody wants to get the cases in the business. And so I do appreciate that. I think that, I don't know. I mean, like, I guess I do talk to a lot of vendors at, conferences over the years, and I love to hear, I love these conversations, whether or not I can always hire you, to do work for whatever organization I'm with or not. Kind of, it varies, right? It depends on what job I'm doing at the time. It may, sometimes, people just see whatever company you're with and think you're my person, and you maybe not. Depending on what you do. And so, but I like to have, the discussion with people and to learn more about who they are as a human. Like I said, I'm always going to come back to, it's the human element, right?
Yep.
Who are they as a human? Who do they work for? What does that organization look like? What kind of services are they offering? And, just understand that. And I try to be mostly transparent with people. I think that's really important in life. So if it feels less like an organic conversation where somebody's just kind of sharing, this is what my specialty is, and, think kindly of me, and more of like a true sales pitch, like, do you have 5 minutes? I might still listen, but I try to just kind of be honest about whether or not I'm the right person, and whether or not I think that I see, like a future, whether that looks like a referral or, staying in touch or not. Because I think that's important, because I think a lot of times salespeople kind of sometimes leave and they're not really sure where they stand. Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, for what I do, I'm often not the person, truthfully, that they think that I could be, but, really when we get down to brass tacks about like what they're offering or what they're selling, it may not be me, which is maybe both good and bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do see what you're saying in terms of vendors are competing against one another at these kind of opportunities that they're getting at these events to kind of stay in the forefront of people's minds who they've worked with before and maybe hopefully done good work for, and perhaps also kind of make some new connections. I would say, I would say being on the other side of the desk, if you are, that the important thing is you never know when you are going to get an opportunity to work for someone. And so I would say that, the important thing that I would consider, that I would personally look for in wanting to work with somebody is, do you honor your commitments? If you've done work for me, was it quality work? And I like to think of vendors more as partners than as just a vendor. So I feel like you're building a relationship over time where both parties have some transparency and that there is established rapport and trust. I think that probably is helpful. And I know probably a lot of vendors work that way as well. And then I think that there are, just like we were talking about recruiters earlier, there's probably some transactional people out there as well. And that's never going to help you long term. So
no. And I imagine though you can see right through it too, like the fake conversations. That someone's just out, like, this is how I always look at it. Like, I remember going to a lot of conferences, right? And you get all the cards of people at the conferences. And then I remember like people being like, oh, well, you need to email everyone after the conference. I'm like, do you know how many emails these people are getting after the conference? And like, what am I going to say in my email that's going to stand out? Like, I feel like it's like, do you really think I'm going to get like any real business out of just sending like, oh, it was great to meet you at the dinner the other night. Like, I feel like I'm like, there has to be some real connection that happened in order to foster a real relationship. If I'm just have your card and I'm like just emailing you like, great to meet you at, blah, blah, blah conference, like, let's have lunch. I think that comes off very transactional, in my opinion.
It definitely can. And it doesn't mean that nothing that starts as maybe perhaps transactional can't eventually, for one reason or another, make it to the next level, I guess. But I think that transparency, organic connection, and kind of seeking to understand, like if you're trying to sell, whether it's a pen, a service, kind of like consultative stuff, I think that seeking to understand what the needs of that organization or that professional are is kind of paramount, right? Because I get people all the time on LinkedIn that want to connect or want, to hire me or do whatever. And it's, kind of like, I'm not here for that. But also, just a situation where people may not have even bothered to understand like what your organization does or what you do. And, perhaps the pitch is completely irrelevant. I'm sure this is like what lawyers get. Perhaps when somebody wants to come work for you and they don't understand the difference between what they're doing and what you're doing, and they haven't really bothered to do any research about it. So I think kind of something important here is also do your due diligence, do your research. And if you're going to do a 5-minute spiel, I think it's nice to ask somebody else if they have time. A lot of times, even when I call people internally, it's not to sell them anything, but I'll say, is now a good time?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you have time right now? I think that it's just, we're getting back to things like the human element, like respect, respect for the person as a whole, but also their time, because it's so precious. And so many of us just have our hands in so many things anymore that, it's the idea. Like I'm like, could we do no Friday meetings? Yes. No meetings Friday, I guess.
I'm with you on that, even though we are filming this on a Friday, but I like to leave my Fridays open. But for something like this, or like, I want to get things done. So then over the weekend, I'm not stressed about something that I should have gotten done that week that's hanging over the weekend. Like I need Friday. I need the time. But so let me ask you this though. What advice would you give though? So say you have like someone who's, I would say like not entry level, but early on in their career, like what advice would you give them to kind of seek out a mentor relationship? Because a lot of times it just happens organically, but I imagine there's someone listening to this and they're in that position and be like, okay, this is Meghan, Evelyn, this sounds great, but how do I do it? Especially those people who, like, a lot of people are very introverted, and the idea of going to a conference and having to like put themselves out there makes them want to run to the bathroom and throw up, and it's just not their scene. I mean, it's not for everybody, right? Like not everyone thrives in that type of environment. So, what advice would you give to someone trying to like kind of build up their networking platform, but their networking sphere, and kind of try to find those mentee-mentor relationships organically? Because it's not like, oh, hey, will you be my mentor? Like, I don't think that works.
Well, I think that some people have tried that and maybe sometimes have had some success, but likely often not. This is such a interesting, like, even like whole topic in and of itself, because this is kind of getting back to what I was saying about we need to do better in the industry about having like industry, framework for this and for supporting and providing mechanisms so that people who are introverted or junior or have less connections can have the platform, right, to make these, to start these conversations and to make these kind of contacts. But I think we're kind of, a lot of organizations are doing kind of cool things. So the CLM has communities that you can connect with like-minded individuals that are in your practice areas or niches, and you can attend virtual meetings and kind of do things with them. They also have local chapters where you can get together with people in your geographic area and actually do things in person. So that's kind of cool. Also, the Alliance of Women in Workers' Compensation, should you be a lady and should you be in workers' compensation, is doing amazing things and has a really fabulous board of directors that have all kind of sat at all levels, right? And have gone from being very junior to now very senior and are creating opportunities for people to meet other women in the industry. So I think that those are two organizations that I would say are doing good things with regard to providing kind of networking opportunities and we'll not say it's not official always, but potential for developing a mentee-mentor relationship. The Association of Professional Insurance Women is also very good. And I think that they have kind of a lot of times like an eye to trying to provide some kind of, let's just say like an environment that allows that to kind of maybe organically take place. But I will say, so people are trying. But I will say, I think we can even do better. And we can always look to do better. But I mean, it is hard, like, especially when you're a junior and you just maybe only know the people on your own team or your own boss. So you can look to some, hopefully at your organization, you can look to potentially get some mentorship, even just from hopefully your supervisor or your boss, if you have a good one. Hopefully they're going to at least teach you more about technical skills and business acumen and at least how your small niche of whatever it is you're doing and the industry fits into the bigger picture. And I would hope you would be learning things from them, because I think if you have a good boss, they're thinking about your overall career progression and development.
Yes.
Something I will say is, like, circling back to when I first became a leader of other people, I was so young and I had never been a leader at an insurance company before. And the person who ended up giving me the job was the VP of risk. And said, so listen, there's two schools of management philosophy. And one school is that you find a person who is a proven leader of people from somewhere else, and you hire them, and then you teach them technical skills to understand this is what we do here. And the other school of leadership or management philosophy, like in terms of bringing managers on, would be that you hire somebody who's a technical expert and you teach them to lead. And so for me, I think in that case, it was definitely, I had a lot of technical skill, but I've never led a team like that. And so I was young and trying to figure it out, but something I decided right away, because I did know that I cared about each one of the individuals that reported to me, was thinking about, in my short career that I had already had, where did I find value in, working relationships with bosses that I'd had previously? Who did I think was great? What did they do for me? And something I kind of landed on was investing in my people and taking an interest in the individuals that reported to me and kind of asking questions like, what, honestly, and first ones, where do you want to be in 3 to 5 years? What is your plan? Do you need help figuring it out? If you tell me you want my job in 3 to 5 years, great. Like, because I feel like we can't be, if you're going to do right by your people, you can't be intimidated by that. You want people under you to grow, and you want them to continue to learn, and you want them to progress in their career, even if it means that you lose a star performer from your team, even if it means maybe they're your peer, or someday maybe they're your boss. Weird things happen in the industry, and I think that's okay. So, with that being said, I feel like hopefully you have a boss who is supportive and is giving you some of that. But I do think that it is important to be able to seek mentors that maybe are outside of your team, your division, your department, maybe even outside of your company. I think it's important to consider people to mentor you, or that you might be able to learn from, that aren't in your practice area. They don't do your niche. Like, I have people that have mentored and sponsored me that are in totally different industries that are within the industry, but not at my organization. People who were like the head of actuary for an organization, other people who, maybe were in business development. I've had a lot of lawyers actually be very kind to me, teach me technical things, teach me things about litigation management, case evaluations, understanding what a file is worth very young, which has served me very well because I've done a lot of litigation management in my career. But just people also who are willing to help you with things like thinking of you for opportunities, making warm introductions to other people when they're like, you know what, I think that you should meet this person and they can help you. I try to do those things for other people, and I think that they're out there. But in terms of trying to teach junior people as they come on, I would say work hard, learn your craft, ask good questions. And in terms of seeking out, mentors, consider your boss, but consider other people maybe within your division that are more senior than you. But also, if you are at a company mixer and you meet somebody who is in a different division that is very smart, that you have a lot of respect for, that perhaps you get along well, you can just organically reach out to them and tell them, a little bit about yourself and that you're looking to learn, new skills or to hone certain skills that you've already kind of, are in their infancy, right? That you're just starting to practice. And would they be interested in having a mentorship relationship with you? Do they have time? Because that's a big thing. And we have to all be honest about that, I think, in order. Don't agree to mentor people if you're not able to commit to a base level, I think, of time, because they need that. It would be better probably than to, refer them to someone else. And a lot of companies now have formal mentor-mentee programs that they run at the organizational level, which pair you up with people that maybe you've never met. And that's another cool opportunity where maybe you don't have to go find your in-house mentor. Maybe your organization's going to say you're going to complete applications, they're going to complete applications, and we're going to find good fits throughout the organization and kind of like match you up. And so I know that's something that my current organization is doing. And I will admit, I currently do mentor a few people in the industry, whether they be, it's mostly unofficial stuff, right? Organization, they're somewhere else. Either they came to me and asked, or, it just kind of developed over time that I was, one of those people for them. But I also, on the flip side, have had that, like I said, myself, where people have been kind, have mentored me, have sponsored me. We stand on the shoulders of giants, don't we? As women, and kind of, I want to make sure that I'm paying it back and I'm paying it forward. But like I said, my current organization has this program, and I haven't, because I've only been there about 2 years, I hadn't really gotten involved with it previously, but they're kind of doing like a new annual cycle of this. And I did just email and say, I'm interested in participating, and I'm interested in being both a mentor and a mentee, because we can all continue to learn throughout our careers. There's never going to be a day that you're going to show up and you're going to go, I know everything. And honestly, if there is, then I have additional questions for you.
Or if you think you know everything, then I think you're fooling yourself. And one thing I would say though is something I think people should keep in mind, especially if you're like on the earlier stages, is not to overlook to your direct peers at your company, because lean on them and learn from each other. And because you never know where they're going to go or where you might go. And that's like where you start to build those connections. I mean, I think back to even right now, like there's 2 attorneys that I worked with at my very first, law firm job. And I remember coming in and asking, like, someone gave me an assignment. It was like, I had no clue what to do. And I went to one of them, and she helped me. And now we've all moved on to different places, but we still like lean on each other to the extent, like, one was like, I'm looking, I really need to get out of this job. Do you know any jobs? And I'm like, well, let me work on my network. And like, so you just never know where like your peers are going to go, and developing that relationship, I think, is equally as important, because not only are there friendships that you develop, true friendships, but it really will serve you well in the long term. And you should do it only for purist reasons too, not just to get yourself somewhere later. I have to put that disclaimer on there, but I just think
Absolutely.
those relationships should not be overlooked, because it
They
can be
shouldn't.
eternal.
And I think that there's something to be said for having a set of good friends where you are as like a supportive network of people. Also, befriending people who are at a peer level. You may all be at the same stage of, if not life, of your career with that organization. And everybody can, it's kind of like I was saying, it's not all top down, it's bottom up, it's side to side. Like, you can learn something from anyone. And truthfully, your peers may not be more senior in title or role than you are, but everyone brings to the table different lived experience, different skill sets, a different educational and professional background. And they may, like, I have to admit, I have one guy right now on my team. He's amazing at tech. And sometimes, if something doesn't work, I might call him and say, hey, have you seen this before? Other people maybe have done other lines of business that perhaps, like, if you see something, you might reach out to them and they might have a really good handle on what that looks like. It could be things like that. It could be, some people are introverts, some people are extroverts, and relying on extroverted, peers to make some introductions for you. So I do that really does kind of align with how I think about things. And I do think that there's something to be learned from everyone, and, forming connections with people. It's kind of, it's that bedrock, right? Of, like, as you move forward, not just who at different organizations and who you keep in touch with and who are friends, and it's not just about what they can do for you. It's about what we can all do for each other.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what friendships are, right? Like, they're not one-sided, and, they're the kind of envelope. It's like a big hug. Well, Evelyn, I hate to cut this off, but we're like out of time. So,
Okay.
but before we close up, I have to ask you this, because I ask this of everybody. So, knowing what you know now in your career, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, my younger self. That's hard. So, and this is easy, like, whatever, we're going to, like, looking back, whatever, hindsight's 2020, but there was this really kind of an element. It's a campy movie. But it was a movie with Drew Barrymore, I think, when I was an undergrad. But anyway, so she's like an undercover reporter. Like I said, it seemed like journalism seemed like such a good idea. But, she kind of has an emotional moment, I think, in the movie. And she says, try to figure out who you are and don't be afraid of it. And so I think that there's a lot to be said for that concept, or for that idea. I think that I would tell myself, self-exploration is a good thing. Research, pick up and read every single thing that you can. Ask questions of people that you work for, that you work with. Seek knowledge. Figure out not just, the inner workings of your team and your company, but kind of continue to learn about yourself. And part of this is the concept of what you want your work life. I mean, people now say work life balance. I think that's a whole different conversation. This balance idea. But we try to figure out who we are, and part of that is just like your character traits, and just kind of like self-awareness, right? And then figuring out what you want to do with yourself. And I'm a huge proponent of writing your own story. And so this does require us to kind of take a look inside, right? And also to kind of establish goals, and goals change, and that's okay. But just to continue working on yourself too. And just, if nothing else, show up every day. That's step number one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice. And I think, continuing to work on yourself is probably like just can't go forgotten. Like we have to keep evolving. We can't be like, oh, that's just how I am. like yes, you have to acknowledge some things. Like, yes, like I will never, be good at or not be good at this. Like I will never have neat handwriting. I will not. But I can try to make it a little bit better. I'm not going to do your calligraphy though.
No, I mean, and no, I think that we have to also, I think, acknowledge that perhaps we all have limits, this concept that like not everybody's going to be an astronaut. Okay. But that's okay because there are so many amazing career fields that we have open, and just kind of like trying to like tie it all together at the end is that we all kind of a lot of us fell into insurance just because we got an interview somewhere, or we had a family friend perhaps that said, hey, listen, there's a job open and you need a job because you're getting out of undergrad or something. And that's not the wrong answer. That's not bad. A lot of life happens like that. It's who you know and what circumstances you're in. And so that does drive outputs. But I'm working on a few things right now, and something's going to, I hope, launch next year, which is something kind of like an industry initiative. But I want to get the youth of like, not just our industry, obviously, because they're not in the industry yet. I want to get our youth energized about the idea of working in the insurance industry on purpose, because there are so many amazing opportunities. There is a wealth of knowledge and industry experience out there, new things to learn every day, people to meet. And really what I love about it is there's so many different practice areas and divisions and niche, we'll say, kind of like professional buckets that you could fall into. It doesn't matter whether you were a math major, a communications major, whether you're a lawyer, whether you're, we have like engineers, right? That and not just IT people. We have engineers that like do A&E. A lot of lawyers eventually go do, we'll say like, or lawyer liability claims. So I just think that there's a lot of great opportunities. I think as an industry, we need to keep that kind of the youth coming. We want to kind of have new people at the table to learn, and I want to kind of like do a shout out for the insurance industry. If you are in college, if you are in grad school, if you are looking for your first job or your second job, or you're just kind of wanting to make a transition, you should check it out and do some research and connect with people, on LinkedIn that are in insurance, because it is a fabulous industry, and it's a great place to learn and grow.
I couldn't agree more. I that's great pitch.
That's my 5 minutes.
Everyone call Evelyn.
well, maybe not. I'm not a recruiter.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down and joining me. We probably will need to have a part 2. We could talk about work-life balance. We talk about your initiative. We talked about a lot of other things on part 2. So thanks so much for joining me today. And of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform as well as YouTube. Thank you all.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell